Okay, guys, let's take a look at the Fetch API. And yes, Fetch is an API in case you did not know. And since it's an API, that means it lives on the window object, just like a lot of everything else, right? So that's why we can actually do window.fetch. Now, according to MDN, Fetch is an API that provides an interface for fetching resources, including across network. What does this mean? This means if you type google.com and you go there, you're actually doing a fetch request. You're doing a fetch request of type get to the server google.com, which will send back to you a response, right? Then Fetch will take that response, parse it, look at its HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and then display that on your screen. And that's what google.com, facebook.com, yoursite.com, mysite.com, that's what all happens. Okay? All right. So how does Fetch work? Fetch actually takes in two arguments. First is the link to the server that you want to send the request to. And second is what's called an options request object, which we will look at later. Okay? So right now we're only going to look at Fetch's first argument. So right here, I'm going to copy this link, and JSONplaceholder.com is what's called a fake API. So you can do all of your fetch calls, all of your fetch requests to practice. As you can see here, we have an array of objects. And these are just, I would say they're like blog posts, right? But they're all random. So it's good practice. And if you go on this site, there's a lot more categories than posts. They also have like photos if you want some extra practice. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. Fetch. What link are we fetching? We're fetching this link. Okay. And also, this is where the request options object would go, right? But we're not going to look at that right now. If we don't put it, the default request is type get, which is the most popular one. So get means whenever you type in google.com, that's a get request. You're saying, hey, let me get the information for google.com and what it looks like so my computer can display it for me. All right, so fetch, and then what? Then response. Okay, so what's happening here? This API call is asynchronous. The method .then is coded by the API so that it's actually waiting for this request to complete before running your function. Okay? Okay, so notice here, then is the method that takes in one argument, and this argument is called the response, but you can call it anything. Most people call it res. Okay, so this is the response or the object that the server sends back to you. Okay, now I don't know if you know this, but whenever a server is sending something back, they have to send it in bytes or streams. Those AKA are just strings. So they have to send back strings, but those strings are actually objects containing data like these. Okay. So basically what the server does is it takes this whole array and it did JSON.stringify on it, and then it sends it to us. Okay. So that means we have to convert it back to an array, right? And we can do that with res or whatever you want to call it. And then we call the .json method. Okay. Now, this is not an intrinsic JavaScript method. This is a method that was created when the fetch API was invented recently. Okay. So it's not part of JavaScript. Okay. So the server sends back strings. Then we JSON that. Okay. And then what happens? Now we have the data that we want, right? Because it went from strings to array. Now we have an array. What do we want to do? I'll use arrow functions since it's so much nicer. Then let's just console.log our data. Now, writing all of this method chaining, kind of be an eyesore, right? So you can also do this. So you can stack your .thens vertically, and you can indent them with one tab like this. This is the standard. Okay, so let me save this. And then let me run this in live server. That's our counter from before. We're going to look at the console, and now we see our data, right? And this matches this link. 1, title and body. 1, title and body as well, right here. Okay. So on the server, they have this array of objects. We want to get it so that we can put this on our website. We do a fetch call of type get to this link. We tell the server, hey, this is a get request. Please send me this array of information. They said, okay, we have to convert it to strings first though. They do that, they send it to us. We get those strings, we call .json to convert it back to an array. Once it's an array, we can console.log it. Now, this conversion is asynchronous as well. Anything that has anything to do with fetch is async. That's why you have to use .then and then .then. Okay? Okay, hope that was helpful. Let's keep going.